Hello and welcome to another update. In this one, we'll be covering the latest updates as the Russians are intensifying their offensive operations and the Ukrainians are also attempting to intensify their operations, and we're seeing a lot of clashes around the front line. Starting out to the southwest of Oryhiv in the direction of Piatkhy, the Ukrainian forces are being pushed hardly here, especially by Piatkhy, where the Russian forces have started attacks both to the west of Lobkove, but also to the south of Piatkhy. According to the latest information, they should have recaptured the village. However, so far I've not received that information from Syriac maps or Deep State map, so I'm waiting until they get some further confirmation. However, it seems that the Russian forces are intensifying their attacks here in this direction. Then we see in the Serpiansky Forest area that the Russian forces are also attacking in this direction, as they're both attacking in the direction of the forest line, as well as to the west of juniper and to the west of Kreminna in the direction of Torske, as well as Sarishna. So they are intensifying their attacks here, trying to advance in this direction. They have made some minor advances along the forest line, but that's about it so far. However, there are a lot of reports of fighting, and as well we see this video here which showcases a lot of artillery as well as thermite bombs being thrown around in the Kremlin front. So generally we see that the Russian forces are heavily preparing for an offensive in this direction. Although it may just be a smaller attack operation rather than an offensive, there is still some heavy preparations which could indicate further advancements by the Russian forces. On top of this, we also see in the Backwood area a lot of fighting here as the Ukrainian forces continue their attempts at advancing in these three specific areas, which is to the south of Berehivka, as well as to the southeast of Oryovo-Vasilivka and south of Ivanivsk in the direction of Klishivka. However, there's been no reports of any advancements in these directions, and we also see the Russian forces clashing with the Ukrainian forces in these directions, so they're trying to face them to prevent any further Ukrainian advances in these directions, especially here where they are fighting heavily for the flanks of Bakhmut. And in connection with this, we see a personal account from a Ukrainian soldier who has fought on the Zaporizhzhia front in this counteroffensive. He says, and I quote, "I personally saw how during our assault the enemy, it's in the Russian forces, aircraft immediately fired on our advancing troops using laser-guided bombs from a far distance. Stas, a soldier with an elite drone surveillance unit helping infantry regain lost territory in the south of the country. It was not an isolated incident," he said. Russia's use of helicopters to attack armor was a very powerful technique to which the Ukrainians had no parity, said Stas, pleading for the West to provide Ukraine with the US Apache attack choppers in addition to F-16 fighter jets. So we see from this that the Russian use of the Ka-52 helicopters as well as other attack helicopters in combination with their aircrafts allow them to have a significant advantage on this front line. And as I've said multiple times in my videos, the Russian forces just launched their aircraft and their helicopters as soon as they detect any Ukrainian movement, the Ukrainians just leave their bases and the Russian Air Force is already in the air. And as soon as they arrive at these open fields where the Russian forces are waiting, they get hit by Russian aircraft, Russian missiles, Russian bombs, and they essentially don't even get to see the Russian forces before they're completely bombarded. However, this is of course in a limited scale, as Russian forces are so far unable to utilize their entire air force. If they were able to utilize their entire air force, they would have at least, it seems, 10 times better and more effective air force, as currently they're using about 100 planes and helicopters. In comparison, they have a stockpile of over 1,000 aircraft alone and many more helicopters. So although they have a very effective use of their air force, it is still at a very minor scale compared to what they have available, which could indicate a lack of training of their pilots or a maintenance of their helicopters. However, this small advantage, although it is small, it makes a very significant difference on the front line, as the Ukrainians, according to this soldier Stas, has no parity. According to Remy, the developments here in the Piatetki area, the Russian forces now control this forest patch right here west of Piatetki, and they are in this direction fighting heavily for the settlement of Serbianchi. So according to him, the Ukrainian forces actually advanced further along this road and pushed the Russian forces in the village of Serbianchi. However, the Russian forces managed to push them out again and have full control over the forest line here to the west of Piatetki. This could give them a significant advantage when attacking the village of Piatetki. So this could be in relation to the reports of the capture of Piatetki, because if the Russian forces captured the forest line, then they most likely have an ability to capture the village as well, especially since the village is mostly destroyed. Now we also see some reports from other parts of the front line. Here we have some video from juniper pipka, according to militaryland.net, and this is a video of the Ukrainian forces destroying some Russian attacks west of Serpiansky, so in this direction right here. The Ukrainian forces also have heavy defenses here, which allows them to prevent any Russian advances, at least on this small scale. And then we also have this video here, which showcases a Ukrainian drone shooting down one of the Russian BMPs. So although the Russians are completely destroying most of the Ukrainian vehicles and armored capabilities launching attacks in the Zaporizhia front, they also have some losses themselves due to Ukrainian artillery, counter-battery strikes, drone strikes, and so on. We also see this video here of footage next to the Backwood flanks of some fighting from the point of view of a UAV, and we see that there's some helicopters flying around. I'm not really sure which side these helicopters are on, but they are flying very low and they are providing close air support. So whoever has them on their side is probably very happy about that. And then finally, in the very north part of the front line, we also see some Russian attacks in the direction of Kupiansk. They're trying to attack southwards and across the river line, trying to establish positions across the river line, and also advancing further south by the river line to establish position on the eastern bank of the Uskil River, allowing them to have a proper defensive position and also having proper flanks for when they in the future may cross the Uskil River line and try to launch offensive operations in that direction. Now, if we take into account the topography of the areas of the front line, like Piatetki, we see that Piatetki is on the low ground as there's an elevation to the north and elevation to the southwest, meaning it is positioned within a valley, and there's a river going here between Piatetki and all the way to the Dnieper River. Then we also have the southern part of Novodanilivka in the direction of Robotine, where we see that there is an elevation by Novodanilivka and also an elevation by Robotine. So the area right here is positioned in a valley, and this position here is lower than the elevation to the north. So this part all the way down here is all located on a lower position than Robotine and Novodanilivka, and that is where the main fighting is happening. As for to the northeast in the parts south of Velika Novosilka, you also see that the Russian forces have the high ground in the western parts, and the Ukrainian forces are again attacking at a lower elevation. So the Russian forces have not just prepared their defenses, they've also prepared their location to be at a topographic advantage, which allows them to take the most possible advantage of these positions, which again allowed them to hold their defensive positions at a much better rate than otherwise if they didn't prepare the topographical areas as well. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you for watching and have a great day.